Hey everybody, this is Anthony from VR Game Rankings and welcome to another episode of our daily vlog series. We are now on episode 48. It is Thursday, December 7th, and I got quite a few news stories to get into today, so we're just going to go ahead and hop right into it. Okay, so the number one news story of the day is Fallout 4 VR is going to arrive one day earlier than expected. We've known for a long time that Fallout 4 VR was arriving on December 12th. This is a game that many of us have marked on our calendars as possibly the biggest VR game that we've seen up to date, and a game that could literally save VR. Of course, that's what we thought like a year or so ago, but it doesn't seem that VR necessarily needs saving. VR is here to stay regardless, but we are getting Fallout 4 VR one day early. Now, it is supposedly going to be arriving on Monday the 11th at 4 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. These, of course, are United States times. And so that is going to be incredibly exciting. And we heard some other information as well. We do have the minimum specs and the recommended specs for Fallout 4 VR. And I'm going to go ahead and dive into that right now. Okay, so minimum specs, they are recommending that you have an Intel Core i5 4590 or an AMD FX 8350 or better. Minimum specs, you're required to have 8 gigs of RAM, and you are required to have a GTX 1070 or an AMD RX Vega 56 or better. You will also need 30 gigs of storage space. Now, on the recommended specs, they recommend that you have an Intel Core i7 6700K, that you double up on your memory and have 16 gigabytes of RAM, and that you have a GTX 1080 or an AMD RX Vega 64 or better, and of course you will need those 30 gigs of available hard drive space. So is anything super shocking here? Not really, because once we got the minimum specs and the recommended specs for Doom VFR, you could kind of naturally assume that Fallout 4 VR was going to have a similar situation. So people like me with a GTX 970, I am really hurting here. So it's going to be interesting to see just how bad it is. Now, of course, with Doom VFR, a lot of us that are rocking some old 970s or 980s or whatever we have, we're still able to play Doom VFR. We might have to turn the settings down a little bit. There might be a little bit of stutter, a little bit of judder, a little bit of issues here and there, but for the most part it works, and it works relatively well. So hopefully Fallout 4 VR won't be too bad for those of us that don't have the highest end of video cards, and this is the kind of game that will probably cause a lot of people to seriously consider upgrading. I know I've said many times I need to upgrade real bad. So that is the number one news story. I was not expecting this Monday announcement, so that is big. This Monday, Fallout 4 VR, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Everybody is going to be... I don't know if there's any kind of preload for this like there was for Doom VFR, but yeah, I mean, we are definitely going to be scrambling to our computers at 4 p.m. Pacific time this upcoming Monday. Okay, in the second biggest news story, which I actually thought this was the biggest news story until I found out about this Fallout thing. Okay, the second big news story is HTC Vive's standalone headset, the Vive Focus, which is coming to the Chinese market. This has not been announced for the US market whatsoever. We don't know if this is ever coming to any of the Western markets. This could be a Chinese only thing. We're not really sure yet, but we do have a pre-order release date, and we do have pricing information. Okay, so first of all, pre-orders are going to begin on December 12th, which of course is Tuesday, with first shipments expected sometime in January 2018. Now, when it comes to price, you might want to take a seat and you might want to strap yourself down because the prices are out of this world. Okay, so I'm translating the prices for into US dollars. These are not in US dollars, but go ahead and make the translation here. So the almond white version of the Vive Focus is going to retail for the equivalent of about $605 US dollars, okay? And if you want that beautiful electric blue one, I'm wearing my nice blue shirt here to kind of represent. If you want that electric blue one, it is roughly $755 for the electric blue. So what is going on here? Why are these things so expensive? Because it's funny. I remember on the VR Roundtable podcast when we were talking about the HTC Vive Focus, we pontificated that the price would vary somewhere between as low as $199 to as high as $299, and maybe it would be right there in the middle at like $249.99. Oh my God, were we completely off the mark? And I would have to say that we probably kind of based our opinions on this because of the Oculus Go being $199. So we thought this would be kind of in a similar range. And it is not in a similar range at all. In fact, it's well more than double our highest estimates. So that is kind of crazy. Another little detail that came out with this, I don't know if this was revealed prior or if this is news that we got today, is that the Vive Focus is going to feature a 75 hertz refresh rate. So it does not feature a 90 hertz refresh rate. So that is kind of interesting as well. So, man, is it death upon arrival, DOA, for the Vive Focus? I don't know. It's definitely not going to be a mainstream item if it comes to the Western markets with that type of a price point. And you got to wonder, how the hell is Oculus getting the Oculus Go as low as $199? Now, of course, they do have that Facebook money. They can take a loss on the first million units sold. They could take $100 loss and take $100 million loss. Facebook has that kind of money in reserve. It's not a problem for them whatsoever. Vive, HTC, of course, does not have the benefit of being able to take losses like that. So that is a big part of it. But this is a 6 degree of freedom headset, which is a big difference over the Oculus Go. But still, this is kind of shocking that the prices would be in this kind of stratosphere. So I'm not that interested in these standalones anyway, so I'm not going to worry too much about it. But man, this is definitely sticker shock, to say the least. Okay, my next news story, we go back to the world. Well, actually, no, this is the first time we've talked about PlayStation VR. PlayStation VR has hit the 2 million sales mark. Sony officially announced this, that on December 3rd, they officially passed the 2 million sales plateau. They also announced that 12.2 million pieces of PlayStation VR software was sold, both digitally and at retail combined. And so this is just great news, continue to be great news. Now, this does include, of course, all the Black Friday sales that took place. This is as of December 3rd, which is just last week. So this does include all that information. And it just continues to be good news. And like I was talking about yesterday, the $199 PSVR, I'm actually quite surprised that there isn't more of a big scuttlebutt about this $199 PSVR. Maybe it's because it's just such a temporary thing, but I think it's incredible news. I think it's major news. I think they could sell potentially another 500,000 of these things based on that price drop alone, if enough people know about it. I don't know if that's the case, and if they have enough availability as well. It is limited to the USA market. Maybe 500,000 is a little bit pushing it, but I mean, they should be able to sell another 200,000 of those at least at this new $199 price point. So I wouldn't be the least bit shocked if we get into February and Sony passes the 3 million mark, because of the momentum that they have going at this point in time. So that's great news for PlayStation VR. We love to see that. And in additional PlayStation VR news, Skyrim VR was the #1 selling game on the PlayStation Store in November. This is pretty big, because I am pretty sure this is the first time that an exclusive VR title, a title that is not available in any other, like Resident Evil 7 may have been the #1 selling game back in January, or possibly February, I'm not sure, but that of course is a flat game that also has a VR component. Skyrim VR is straight up VR. No one is buying this to play vanilla version of Skyrim, and for this to hit #1 on the PlayStation Store in an incredibly busy month like November with all the other major releases that are coming in November, this is incredibly huge news, very exciting. Again, momentum is really moving in Sony's direction. You got to be happy for Sony, you got to be happy for the VR market in general. All of this just continues to bubble up, and things continue to look on the bright side as we move forward. So that's great news for Skyrim. Doom VFR was also on this list, despite the fact that it didn't actually release until December 1st. Of course, obviously, there are pre-sales, and that is how it jumped up into the charts for November. In a little bit less positive news, we have Final Fantasy Monster of the Deep. This game registered at 9th place on the US charts, and it did not chart in the top 10 on the European chart. So not the greatest of sales results for Monster of the Deep. For the Final Fantasy Monster of the Deep game didn't have the greatest sales numbers, but other than that, looks like pretty good news here. And Doom VFR, they're obviously going to rise up the charts considerably in the month of December, having a full month of being able to sell that game. So obviously Doom VFR will probably rise up those charts in December. Okay, now the next news story I have is, well, tonight we do have the Game Awards, which is hosted by Jeff Keighley. And there are a couple of announcements that could be made tonight that are VR related, so you might want to tune into this, or maybe just wait till it's over and catch the highlights. But Alchemy Labs has announced that their new VR game will be revealed tonight on this show. And also, I believe it was revealed that this is a multi-platform title that will be coming to PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift, and the HTC Vive, probably Windows Mixed Reality as well, although I don't know that that was confirmed. But we're going to find out what this game is tonight, and this is pretty huge news because let's remember their very first game, of course, was Job Simulator. Then they did the Rick and Morty game, and both of those games have been very well received. They were purchased by Google, so there was a little bit of a worry there that maybe Alchemy Labs, you know, will they continue to make VR games for all kinds of headsets? Would they start focusing on Daydream? You know, what is exactly going to happen? What is their true relationship with Google in terms of why did Google buy them? How is this going to affect everything? Don't really know so much about that, but the good news is they do have another mainstream game that is coming. It will be announced tonight. And one thing I'll say about Alchemy Labs is you can say what you want about Job Simulator and about Rick and Morty, but honestly, when it comes to VR games, I don't know that there is another developer that has done a better job with just pure interactivity in terms of using your hands, picking things up, interacting with things. In Job Simulator and in Rick and Morty, you have amazing abilities to interact with so many different things. I can't tell you how many VR games I get into and you see a drawer somewhere, you want to open the drawer. You see a cupboard somewhere, you want to open a cupboard. You see a hammer laying on a table, you want to pick up that hammer. But in a lot of VR games, you can't do this. In a lot of VR games, some things are interactive and some things aren't. But when it comes to Job Simulator and when it comes to Rick and Morty, most everything that you see is interactive, and that is a huge factor. And so I am very much looking forward to their next big game. It'll be interesting to see, will this be a licensed game like Rick and Morty? Are they doing another licensed game, or is this going to be new IP? And exactly what are we looking at here? And when could this possibly release? Probably sometime, obviously, in 2018. I wouldn't expect this to be some type of last-minute arrival, but we will find out tonight at the Game Awards. So that is going to be exciting. In other Game Award news, we have Squanch Games, which, of course, you might you might know them as Squanch Tendo. They have changed their name to Squanch Games. Now, Squanch Games was formed by Justin Rowland and Epic Games producer Tanya Watson. These are the co-creators of Squanch Games. They, of course, came out with Accounting. Now, that was in collaboration with Crows. And this is really their first big VR game, because Accounting, they didn't sell that for anything, and I don't know. Accounting is more of an experience than a game. For example, if you go to VR game rankings, you will not see Accounting ranked among the best VR games. You will see it ranked among the best VR experiences. So hopefully this experience will be more of a game. Although either way, a lot of people are looking forward to this, and so we'll see what happens here. So that's going to be exciting. Another game, the Game Awards announcement tonight. So it'll be exciting to see that. And there could be additional announcements at the Game Awards for other VR games that we're not even expecting. So hopefully there might be some other additional announcements that could come this evening as well. So we'll look forward to that. All right. Another story I have is Oculus Story Studios' final project will be premiering at Sundance in January. Now, this is truly exciting because honestly, I didn't know if they had another project that was in the works. I remember we talked about when they shut down. We talked about this on VR Roundtable. Don't remember what episode this was. That was obviously a long time ago when we found out that Oculus Story Studios was shutting down. I am a really big fan of Henry. I'm a big fan of Lost. I'm a big fan of Dear Angelica as well. As far as I'm concerned, they are 3 for 3 on those experiences. Really powerful experiences. I honestly feel like Henry is more of a Pixar VR thing than what we got with Coco. Now, of course, Coco was co-designed by Magnopus in addition to Pixar, so it wasn't just 100% Pixar. And also, we know that a number of Pixar employees were working for Oculus Story Studios. And so we got Henry, we got Lost, which is another awesome experience, and Dear Angelica. It was really surprising how impactful Dear Angelica is when you think about the fact that it's basically just like cartoon writings that are appearing, but the way it's done with the music and the sound effects, it's actually quite powerful. And so the good news here is we are getting one more major feature that is coming from this studio. That was basically this production was in progress when the studio was decided to be shut down, but they decided, you know what, we're going to go ahead and finish up this project. This will be the final project, and then that will be the last hurrah, so to speak. So what am I talking about here? Well, it's called Wolves in the Walls, and I don't know that there's much information that is available on this other than the fact that it is premiering at Sundance in January. So we're definitely going to be looking forward to that. This is going to be exciting to see what this final Oculus Story Studios production is going to look like. Okay, and my final bit of news is Sprint Vector will be launching a closed beta in January of this year. Now, this information kind of came out. It's related to an esports tournament that is being sponsored by Intel, and it was announced that Sprint Vector is going to be involved in this, and there is a closed beta for Sprint Vector that will officially begin in January. This is obviously Survios is the developer of Raw Data. This is their next big game. It's kind of like a racing game slash platformer, a little bit of to the top, a little bit of climby, but more of a racing game where you're moving your arms and going through the world, moving incredibly fast, but no motion sickness whatsoever. They've kind of figured that out, and a lot of people are excited for this. Obviously, Raw Data was such an incredible game, so we're very interested to see what Survios's next big game would be, and it is Sprint Vector, and it's coming sometime in 2018. Obviously, this closed beta starting in January, so it might be later in spring that we actually get our retail release of Sprint Vector. And Sprint Vector, of course, is coming to all 3 platforms: Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and PlayStation VR, probably Windows Mixed Reality as well. Okay, so that basically wraps it up for all of the news stories I have. And what I wanted to mention today is I want to talk a little bit about Oculus Dash and Oculus Home and the update and all of that. I also wanted to talk about Star Wars Droid Repair Bay. Now I have to reveal, first let's go into the Star Wars thing. Still have not been able to experience Star Wars Droid Repair Bay. Every time I try to start it up, it just doesn't start. Nothing happens. It's just stuck in like a Steam loading screen. Just doesn't work for me. Now, at first, what I thought was, wait a minute, maybe this is not for the Oculus Rift at all. And I went on to Steam and I was looking at the Steam page and it does just say HTC Vive. And I kind of forgot the fact that it's not specifically mentioned as an Oculus Rift thing. So I thought, oh, maybe this just doesn't work on the Oculus Rift, period. I went on to the Oculus subreddit. There was a little thread about it and I asked, is this working for anybody else? And there are other people that are playing this no problem on their Oculus Rift. So it does work on the Oculus Rift. Unfortunately, I have not been able to get into it. I have read a lot of the comments from various people on the HTC Vive subreddit that were talking about this, and apparently this experience doesn't run very well. There's a lot of little issues and hiccups. If you don't have the most high-powered rig, it doesn't seem to run very well. A lot of people talking about it's very blurry, and a lot of people didn't seem to be that incredibly impressed by this. But I really don't have any first-hand comments, so can't really tell you much about that. I might try to get in there again today and see if I can get it to run, but I don't know. For some reason, it just doesn't run it just doesn't want to run for me, so whatever. That's the way it works. You know, it's funny because it's like, I just got rid of my my HTC Vive. I sold off my headset and I'm kind of parting out my HTC Vive parts and putting that money off to the side and waiting for the next big Steam VR headset that I hope will be announced in the very near future, and I'll probably go ahead and jump on that. And this could kind of be one of the first situations where I kind of got stung a little bit by not having my HTC Vive, because it might have ran a little bit better with the HTC Vive. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the Oculus Dash and the Rift Core 2.0 update and all of that. Okay, so what happened yesterday is I went into my Oculus account and I started the process of opting into the beta and downloading all the different little downloads that I had to do. And then when it first popped up, it said your video card drivers are out of date. So I went and had to download some new NVIDIA drivers for my 970. So I went ahead and did all of that. It took a long time, actually. It was a lot of different downloads going on. But I finally got into it. And I have to say, it is truly impressive. Especially, I was in the home area, just kind of exploring these different home spaces, teleporting around, walking around in these different home spaces, picking up a ping pong paddle, picking up the ping pong balls, hitting it, picking up the little laser gun and shooting at the targets, very similar to First Contact. Just absolutely beautiful environment that I was in. The very first home area that I experienced was, there was like an ocean with pirate ships, and it almost kind of looked like it looked like Star Wars, that one planet in Star Wars, Naboo, is it? Where, you know, the architecture of the buildings by the ocean and stuff, it kind of looked like that. There were birds flying in the air. You had the pirate ships in the ocean. Looked really cool. Looked absolutely awesome, actually. Graphics were amazing, and my performance was relatively good. I didn't really have too many performance hiccups. There was some worry about that this was going to kind of stress your computer a little bit, but I didn't seem to have any trouble there. So I went around and was sampling that out. Then I tried some of the other examples. I went into this other room example where you're kind of like on the border of outer space and you see these planets, and you're going around the different parts of the room, and you see the sun, and the earth is moving around, and you have these little cartridges that are laying around with your games on it. And if you go over to this one table, there's actually an Oculus like video game console that looks very much like a Neo Geo. Anybody out there that knows about the Neo Geo, it looks almost exactly like a Neo Geo, and I believe you can take those cartridges, pop them in there, and actually start up a game that way. I didn't actually do that myself because I didn't want to start up any games. I just wanted to kind of explore the space. So I was going all around exploring these different rooms. I went into a third room, and the third room I went into, it was weird because it was like, it was the big giant room of the first room, but it was completely empty except for this smaller area that was all like bushes and trees and like ivy growing around. It was very nature-like, and there was like a little creature, like a little elf, little goblin, little creature that was running around and moving around, looked like a hologram, looked absolutely beautiful. Lots of cool things were going on here. In the very first world that I was in, there's this bird that's flying around that is made out of a lot of polygons, and as it's flying around, some of the polygons kind of trail off of it. There's these little hummingbirds that are flying around. Those look really cool. There's Oculus books. There's all kinds of little environmental things that you can put in the room. You could take a basketball hoop and you could put it onto the wall. You can grab a basketball and try to shoot the basketball. And if you shoot the basketball and you make a basket, it makes a little noise. Lots of cool things, just really cool. The dash is cool, being able to go into the different games, change your settings, and do all of that. I didn't get into actually like watching a YouTube video and pinning it around. I did look at my desktop and was like pinning it in different areas and pinning all the different menus in different parts of the experience, and that worked out really well. That was cool. I went to the store, and through the headset, like the store and the headset, that has been improved by leaps and bounds. It looks really cool. Visually looks really cool. You can go to like the best-selling games, the highest rated games, and when you click on an experience, it'll actually show the video in a window right there in there as well. So really cool. Didn't get to spend a ton of time with this. This was actually later in the evening that I did this, and spent quite some time in there, but wasn't able to explore everything. So I definitely have to explore some more of that going forward, but I was really impressed with this. Now, there are some minor concerns with this because it does use more of your computer power to run this, and some people were saying that if you have this running, like somebody was saying that their performance for Steam VR games just went down the crapper because they had this, but other people are saying no, that's not the case. So there are some little issues because one of the problems that I've had with my Oculus Rift since getting it is a lot of times I will go to use my Oculus Rift, and on the notifications it'll say something about my HDMI cable is unplugged, which it's not unplugged. But what I have to do is I go to the back of my computer where my graphics card is, I just unplug the HDMI cable and plug it back in. Now, what does that have to do with Oculus Dash and Riftcore 2.0? Well, one of the known issues is sometimes you can get this message, and simply unplugging your HDMI cable and plugging it in is not going to work. You're actually going to have to restart your computer if this situation happens. Now, so far, that hasn't happened to me yet, but if it does happen on a frequent basis, I don't know, I might actually have to like go opt out of the beta, because that would get seriously irritating, because the plug in your HDMI cable notification, I would get that all the freaking time, and it really wasn't a big deal, just, you know, plugging my cable in and out like that. That's no big deal. But actually going through a hard restart of my computer, don't really want to do that. So we'll have to see if that becomes a factor as we move forward. But basically, guys, I've hit around the 28-minute mark or so, so that is going to go ahead and wrap it up. This, of course, is episode 48 for Thursday, December 7th. Thanks again for watching, guys. Really appreciate all your comments. Love the love that everybody's showing me on this channel. It's great. Love the comments. Definitely like these videos. Definitely subscribe, and I will, of course, see you guys tomorrow. Take it easy. Have a great Thursday. Later.